3, 8 minutes in. David Icke is our guest for the rest of the hour, maybe a little bit in the next hour if he can do it. David Icke, the former professional soccer player, journalist, network anchor for the BBC, spokesman in the 80s for the British Green Party, was the head of it, and since 1990, full-time investigator into what is really controlling the world. Many have dubbed Icke the most controversial speaker on the planet. His newest book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More, is available at davidicke.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. So, George Soros is openly convening Bretton Woods II to move away from the dollar. Open world government is all over every major publication as the solution, a new idea they just got 5 minutes ago, and it's exactly what we broke down from their documents decades ago they were planning. They're now in the Associated Press saying, yeah, we're chemtrailing you. It's to save the earth from global warming. They're just throwing so much in our face. They're starting all these new wars in the Middle East, financing the rebels, openly moving to try to overthrow their former dictators and oligarchs and royalty, the monarchs. CNBC's reporting that the U.S. is going to go the same route as Greece, Portugal. We're being imploded by design, just as the big banks have done to the third world. They're doing a government shutdown right now to scapegoat the unions and the welfare moms, and I'm not saying they're perfect. The point is that's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic compared to the 1.5 quadrillion in fake fiat debt made up by the bankers that they've gotten us to sign on to. We're now entering the next phase of the New World Order, and after that comes biological weapons releases to wipe out most of the population, the globalists have stated. I mean, we're following their own blueprints here. We're not making this stuff up. Truth is stranger than fiction. And my film, Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, covers that population reduction program and how the globalists are delusional and on power trips and think they're God and they're going to merge with machines after they get rid of us. Whether that's going to happen or not, or whether that's theoretical and could actually be done, that can be debated. The point is these people are nuts. As Karl Rove said, they control reality. Doesn't matter what reality is. A fool goeth before the fall. They are filled with delusions of grandeur on serious power trips, as most psychopaths are. And psychopaths get more and more arrogant, more and more out of control. They enjoy hardship. They enjoy mutating societies culturally, spiritually, intellectually, so they can manipulate us better. And I say no to this. I'm not their slave. I don't want to be their slave. And as David Icke says, human race, get off your knees. So here to discuss a host of issues from what's happening in Japan, Libya, the new earthquakes, all of it is David Icke. David Icke, good to have you back with us.
Cheers, Alex.
So much is going on. Now, you heard me throw out a plethora of things we can get into first, or if you want to go somewhere else first, you've got the floor.
Well, I think that what we're seeing now is absolutely the next stage of what we've been talking about for a long, long time. What's been predicted, what people have said is just conspiracy, supposition and all that stuff is now increasingly in our faces. I mean, what we're seeing, for instance, with what's going on in the Middle East is they're talking about the international community. This is being said all over, a range of things all over the world in different situations, the international community. That's just code for world government, of course. And one of the crucial things in the Middle East is that they've handed over, at least officially, the operation in Libya to NATO. And I wrote in a book in 1994 that the World Army was going to be, in part, kind of stepping stoned into existence by NATO and NATO countries operating more and more and more out of the North Atlantic region. They're in Afghanistan. We've effectively got a world army in Afghanistan. They're now taking over this stuff in Libya, this nonsense, this completely engineered situation. And as you say, we've got Soros now wanting to put forward his economic, I'm sure the World Central Bank will be in there somewhere. So all these things that we've been talking about, and people have either, looked at it or said that's nonsense. I'm sorry, it's in your face. It's on the TV news now, and this is just the start of this phase. If we don't wake up as a human race in vast numbers and stop cooperating with this system, then all we're going to do is watch our own prison being built, because you can be in ignorance that the prison's being built and it's being built, or you can become a bit more informed about what's going on, and then you can consciously watch your prison being built. There is an alternative to that, which is we put down the divide and rule lines of religion and race and income bracket and country and culture, and come together, realizing that we're all the targets. No matter what our religion, color, or culture, we're all the targets. And we're reaching, of course, another level of this situation, which I've been looking at for a while, Alex, and ticking them off, and that's radiation. We're seeing this, of course, a terrible radiation outbreak and release as a result of the Japan earthquake. But I've been ticking them off for years. There is definitely a clear agenda to make humans receive more and more sources of radiation.
The cell phones, the body scanners. I had Dr. Busby, top chemical physicist, on, and he said many of my colleagues believe this is being done on purpose because sperm count's down by over 85%. Now they're saying in the U.S. they're going to raise the safe level of radiation to 25,000 times what it was. They're saying, don't worry that it's in the milk and the food. It's good for you. Fukushima is still blowing up and smoking, and they're telling us it's no problem. And and now Ann Coulter comes out and says radiation's good. Monbiot, who wants world government,
unbelievable.
He's saying he's now for nuclear power. I mean, many people believe they're putting him in population centers to reduce fertility.
And other things, you see, because at the end of everything, beyond the physical body that we see, we are an electromagnetic field. People call it the auric field. It can be measured. It's electromagnetic. Just as the Earth has a magnetosphere, so do humans. And when you introduce sources of radiation that are going to disharmonize and disrupt and disturb, distort that energy field, then you're throwing forward into health, into the way we think, and all these things, the way our brains work, a whole lot of potential consequences, because you're distorting the harmony of the human energy field. And it's definitely a cold, calculated policy. Like I say, I've been ticking them off, the increasing sources of radiation. And there's another one that a lot of people miss, and that's HAARP. Because what HAARP is doing in Alaska is it's bouncing fantastic amount of power of radio waves into the ionosphere, the upper atmosphere of the planet, which has, among other things, the role of protecting the Earth from incoming cosmic radiation that wouldn't be terribly good for us. And you look at the document that came out around 1999 out of the European Parliament, the report on HAARP that people can see on the internet, where it's actually talking about the fact then that HAARP was shooting holes in the ionosphere and opening up the Earth, therefore us, to cosmic radiation that should be deflected away. Now, all this stuff is not happening by accident. It's a coordinated attempt to change the sea that we live in. Because, if you want to affect all this fish at the same time, what do? You affect the sea. And we live in a sea of energy, the Earth's energy field. And if you manipulate that, you therefore affect all the people who are operating in that field. And that's what's going on.
Well, look at how they approve the cell phones, which thousands of studies now admit manipulates the mind. I think we can just search the term right now. Cell phones affect brain waves, cancers, the cell towers, the RF, and all their studies from even before they legalized it showed it would do this, but they still roll it out, even though it hurts the elite zone children. Why do the globalists love to hurt themselves, not just us?
Well, maybe they're not quite the same as us. Maybe that's the answer, and therefore they're not affected in the same way. I mean, Alex, the rabbit hole of all this goes so deep, deeper than any of us have got so far, but we will. And we're going to have to open our minds in the end to the fact that the situation we're facing is much greater and operates over multiple different levels beyond the ones that we see, touch, and taste. And they clearly are not going to irradiate the planet if it's going to have a fundamental effect on them too. So there's something different about them. And when we talk about these bloodlines and all the rest of it. Well, the bloodlines are genetics. The genetics are the physical level of it all, but they are an expression of a vibrational field. And maybe their vibrational field is not affected in this way, the way that the rest of the human vibrational field is, because these are hybrids. They're not the same as humans. This is a much bigger story than people realize, even those that have awoken to great amounts of it.
Well, I only go with what I can prove, but there's no doubt that they love killing humans. The globalists love diseasing and permanently wrecking the DNA with the poisons, the chemicals, the radiation. It's admitted our IQs are dropping, the sperm counts are plummeting, we're falling apart. And they're saying they're raising the safe radiation levels to 25,000 times.
That's right.
And they say, look, 25,000 times is good for you. And baby formula over half. Corn syrup, good for you. The kids getting diabetes when they're 5, good for you. Turned out the federal government is knowingly covering up that they're mining radioactive isotopes with the fluoride, putting it in the water supplies, comes out in local Texas news. Nobody gets in trouble. So they're shooting kids up worldwide with syphilis. I mean, there's no doubt that they want to wreck the DNA of humanity, and they're waging war against us, so they might as well be from Planet Pop-Tart.
Well, the thing is, Alex, you just reeled off all those different things.
Well, stay there. Got a break, David. We're going to give you the floor when we come back, and I want to get more into Libya, more on the economy, more on Bretton Woods, too, with David Icke. I'm Alex Jones. So we live on a planet run by a ruling elite who hates humanity and is doing everything they can to destroy our DNA, give us cancer, and make us basically mentally retarded. You've got a public that's conditioned now where it comes out in Texas that the government is putting radioactive isotopes in the water mined at the phosphate mines all over the country, and no one gets in trouble, nothing happens. And I'm the weirdo for reporting on it. Now, David, I rattled off a bunch of examples of just psychopathic behavior institutionalized with the general public trained to accept it and be thankful for the mass murder. And you were about to make a comment before we hit that break.
Yeah, and it's this, all those things you reeled off, and of course with more time you could have reeled off a lot more. They're different aspects of attacks on human health, the human mind, all these other areas of human society. They're from a multitude, a mass of different directions, different subjects, different areas, and they're coming in a coordinated way. Now, does anyone still believe that is being orchestrated by people sitting around a table deciding their next move? It's much bigger than that. These players that we can name are players. They are players out of something. They are not actually the originators of it. It's much bigger than that. And in the next few years, we're going to have to open our minds to that. And a lot of this technology that they're using, which is way beyond anything they're admitting to, is not necessarily only coming from human sources, because they've been doing things for a long, long time that have been high-tech in the areas we're talking about, manipulating the Earth's energy field and therefore everyone within it for a long time. This European Parliament report on HARP from about 1999. It says at one point here, this is from the European Parliament, from the 1950s, the USA conducted explosions of nuclear material in the Van Allen belts to investigate the effects of the electromagnetic pulse generated by nuclear weapons explosions at these heights on radio communications and the operation of radar. This created new magnetic radiation belts which covered nearly the whole Earth. The electrons traveled along magnetic lines of force and created an artificial aurora borealis above the North Pole. These military tests are liable to disrupt the Van Allen belt for a long period. The Earth's magnetic field could be disrupted over large areas, which would obstruct radio communications. According to U.S. scientists, it could take hundreds of years for the Van Allen belt to return to normal. HART could result in changes in weather patterns. It could also influence whole ecosystems, especially in sensitive Antarctic regions. And it's talking about here the way that it shoots holes in the ionosphere and allows incoming cosmic radiation, etc. Now they did those experiments, Alex, in the 1950s.
Well, let me stop you. In the film Trinity, narrated by Captain Kirk, by William Shatner, that's aired on the Discovery Channel now 15 years ago, they show the government footage of it in one night firing 10 high-powered nukes into the Van Allen radiation belt and them exploding in space as big white balls. And they said that many of the scientists thought it would probably destroy the atmosphere and the Earth, but they still did it. Now they claim that the Hadron Collider has created a new form of matter. In fact, I forgot to cover that, guys. Just say new form of matter found at Superconducting Super Collider. That was out 2 days ago. And then they go on to say when they first detonated the first A-bomb, around half the scientists thought it was going to ignite the atmosphere and kill everybody on Earth, but they still did it. And then I read this black poetry, this dark poetry out of transhumanist top people saying, yes, we may destroy the Earth, but so what? We're going to go on willing.
Yeah, well, of course, a lot of these people, in fact, the vast majority of these people are utterly bloody insane. I mean, you know, they're just absolutely crazy, which makes it far more difficult to reason with them because they have no sense of reason. It's something that the mass of humanity will not be able to really understand, how these people can look through their eyes and look at the same thing we look at and see a completely different picture. They don't see the world the way we see it. They don't see life the way we see it. They don't see anything the way we see it. And by the way, that super collider in France and across to Switzerland on the French border there, that's also about, to a very large extent, about manipulating the Earth's energy field and other things because of what it would, the effect of it would have upon the Earth's magnetic field and its energy field in general. There's a war going on, Alex, on the Earth's magnetic field and the energy field that humans live in. And it's a war that's been building up for a long time, and we're now starting to put the pieces together and see it.
Incredible. And we've read all these patents on air where the light bulbs they're mandating go in will be used for data to go over them through the power lines, flickering, programming your computers, accessing them, and programming you through your eyes. And the first places they're testing them in Texas and Minnesota are police departments. And these are literally mesmerizing mind control systems in the news, and the cops are in there right now. It's Buck Rogers, folks. Studying this for 20 years, and so much of what he wrote about 15, 16, 17 years ago has unfortunately come true. And, you know, what do Christians say? They say there's an evil force, the fallen one, Lucifer, with his angels. And you read what's in Genesis and Ezekiel, and they're saying they manipulated humans' genetics. I don't go there. I go with open world government being announced, the pension funds, the death benefits of the troops being stolen, nobody getting in trouble, uranium and other isotopes being put in our water. It comes out, the government's doing it and covering it up, but the news calmly reports it. They have been caught since the 50s adding cancer viruses to vaccines. The UN's been caught sterilizing people. Whoever they are, evil whatever, demon-possessed people, whatever, the evil psychopaths with continuity of agenda in every country, putting the same systems in, waging war against everybody, dumbing everybody down. And now, David, they've entered a phase of flaunting it. More and more, they come out and make absurdist statements about George Soros is a humanitarian. He helped Nazis round people up. And if you don't like it, you're a Nazi. Let me just expand briefly. You're staying with us 20 minutes the next hour so we can continue. They come out, Monbiot says, now that these reactors blew up, I think we need more. I now love radiation. Ann Coulter says the people of Japan should be thankful for their radiation. It's good for you. It seems like they're trying to sell us on insanity and getting us ready for even crazier things to happen where they just giggle and snicker and run around. And Al-Qaeda's now our friend in Libya. And if you don't like Al-Qaeda, you're un-American. They're just throwing it all in. Yeah, the banks launder the drugs. And if we catch you with them, we're putting you in prison. There's just a complete flaunting as they're almost trying to sell delusion where everything's so confusing, people just go into a catatonic state.
Well, that's the word, confusion. The idea is to create so much upheaval in people's lives, so many shocks, so many things to fear, and to keep pumping them out. And we're in that phase now, my goodness me, look at it. And we're going further into it before we turn this around. So that people are so shocked, are so in fear, and so overwhelmed almost a fear version of information overload, that they just switch off and enter a state of acquiescence, like a mouse in a laboratory maze that has so many shocks going down certain channels in the maze, it suddenly stops and its behavior is rewired, and you can take the shock equipment away. It ain't going to go down those channels again. You have rewired its perception, its behavior, and this is what it's about. It's about as many shocks as possible. And that's why we have to stay calm and we have to stay strong and not fall for this, not fall into this shock created acquiescence. Because when people are in fear, they invariably, if they're not strong within themselves, they'll look for someone to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear, and therefore they'll give their power to that someone or that something as almost like an exchange for protection. Now, what we're looking at now is humanity as a whole being collectively hit by these multi-shocks and multi-reasons to fear, and the idea is to get a collective version of that, which is you give your power away to who you think can sort the mess out or protect you from your fear. And it's no accident that it's in this period where they're playing this collective mind game, this collective behavior acquiescence mind operation, that they're coming out with all these key areas. Like you said, George Soros is going to be pushing the global, long-planned global economic structure. And what we're seeing now in the Middle East is the world army being more and more into the fold.
And the perfect pretext, I want to stop you. I want you to go back into Soros, because he is announcing a global banking regulatory system run by the very bankers that have engineered the crisis, now being our saviors. You also sent us a map you want us to put on screen for viewers, not just listeners, to talk about that world army. So let's go over Soros first, then into this world map you sent us.
Okay, well, what I've been talking about, and others have been talking about for a long time, and it's even in their own documents, the plan is to, I think we talked about this at some point the last time, Alex, the plan is to make government irrelevant to sorting out economic situations created by this cabal of bankers. And therefore, the bankers, I mean, crikey, I mean, it's like deja vu, what we're seeing now, because what we've been pointing out was coming is now happening on the news. The idea was, I said in 2008, there's a three-point plan here. One is to crash the economy 2008, September, so people know there's a problem. Secondly, manipulating governments to throw vast amounts of money, borrowed money, at the banks to make the governments reach a point where they can no longer, even ludicrously in throwing money at the banks, they can no longer react. And we're now in that point because now governments all over the world are introducing, my goodness me, in this country, Britain, austerity programs which are taking away the basic benefits from the most vulnerable of people who have been made more vulnerable by the economic crash caused by the banks. And so the governments are in that stage two I was talking about now, where they cannot react. And the idea, stage three, is to create another massive economic crash. Governments have no response ability at all. So the bankers, people like Soros, who's a front man for the Rothschilds, come forward and say, this is how we must sort it out. And he's now openly making those overtures, as you mentioned earlier. So we're seeing this reaching another level of playing out, where the predictions, the sometime over the rainbow, is now in our face, and we're seeing it. And what's happening in the Middle East, Alex? I'll put the picture up on the screen. That picture is of countries that are, and there are more, that are targeted to be taken over by the NATO, European Union, North American cabal. And when I say that, it's not the British doing this or the Americans doing this. It's being done through those countries using those countries, but actually the American government and the British government and the French government with old Sarkozy and stuff, they're just satellites of this global cabal. They're not representatives of the people of those countries.
They were captured by the banking cartel many centuries ago, many of them.
Yes, they were.
They're engines.
They're vehicles, and the governments of the world are, the vast majority of them anyway, and they want to make it all of them, are actually like transnational corporation subsidiary companies of the global, company, and they carry out the orders of the centrally dictated headquarters of this network, and that's why, as you pointed out earlier, we're seeing the same things being introduced in countries all over the world at the same time. This is how it's done. And if we look at that map, first of all, it's worth looking to the right, where Somalia and Ethiopia and a place called Djibouti, just across the sea from Yemen. That is the African base of AFRICOM. Now, what the American military, and the American military too, is just a satellite military of the global cabal. They call it the American military, but it's not. It has all that money spent on it, fantastic amounts of money. So it basically spends more money on the military, America, than the rest of the world.
Well, notice the French have now invaded via NATO the Ivory Coast and are backing the rebels slaughtering people. This is AFRICOM moving into Africa.
Exactly. But the reason so much fantastic amounts of money are spent on the American military is not for the benefit of the American people. It's because that is at the moment the main point of military imposition for the cabal. And of course, Britain being one of the great centres of the cabal, not the British government, but the City of London, etc., it's always in the slipstream of America when it goes into a country. So from AFRICOM, it was created during the Boyd Bush administration, and the question is, why has America got an African command? Well, it's Africa. Well, the idea is to pick these countries off. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, in his book Grand Chessboard in 1998, he said that the key area to control the world is what he calls Eurasia. And Eurasia is basically Europe across to China and then down into the Middle East. And what we've seen, Alex, over the last many, many years is that process of picking off the key areas of Eurasia, and now they're moving into Africa. What they want, for a start, is to take the whole of those North African countries over, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, where, of course, they've had the trouble. There's now protests in Jordan and Syria. They're the target countries too. They've got Iraq. They're in there. And then, bingo, there's the big one to the right of Iraq, Iran. Then they're already in Afghanistan. They're totally coldly destabilizing Pakistan, and then just off that map, you're hitting the Chinese border. And these countries are being systematically targeted. And what they're doing in the Muslim world is playing off the divisions going back, goodness me, tell me it's not true, to the 7th century between the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. And the reason that Saudi Arabia and people like the United Arab Emirates are being allowed to go into Bahrain and create and commit terrible atrocities to suppress the people's rebellion in Bahrain, and been allowed to do it with no reaction and no condemnation while everything's targeted on Libya, is because they want to play Saudi Arabia, that is overwhelmingly a Sunni Muslim country, and others around it. They want to use them in their targeting of Iran, which is really the center of the Shiite Muslim world. It's dominated Iran by Shiite Muslims. And so if they get Iran, this is the irony, if they get Iran by using Saudi Arabia and these others to support that, then Saudi Arabia will be the next one to go, because there won't be any use to the cabal and the agenda anymore. And at the moment, we've got this extraordinary situation, really, where the United Arab Emirates has sent planes to join the NATO force to protect civilians, it says, in Libya, while at the same time they've sent their troops into Bahrain to stop civilians with protests with violence.
I want to stop. It's incredible. I want to stop you just briefly and remind folks that the Obama deception that came out 2 years ago, Fall of the Republic that came out a year ago, we predict with our experts in both these films that African would launch wars all over Africa, starting in North Africa. Webster Tarpley predicted that with precision, off following Zbigniew Brzezinski and other people's statements. So you can show people these 2 DVDs and explain to them, look at the date of it, and that's what really gets people's attention, is that we understand the globalist program. David, I watch CNN, Fox, you name it now. It is so dumbed down. But what's scary is you have Jay Rockefeller, all these other globalists saying they want to shut down the alternative media now. They are scared because we're not dumbed down. We're watching what they're actually doing, and they're beginning to panic.
Yes, absolutely. But, you know, in Libya, what's happening there now, Alex, is a classic a kind of accumulation of so many things that pull this together. First of all, Libya, and I've given no brief for Colonel Gaddafi. I want all dictators to disappear. But if we're going to be streetwise, we have to see the shades of grey within the black and white that is given to us on the television news. And they have a central bank which issues the currency, and if you do business with Libya, you go through the central bank. That's the last thing this cabal of global bankers want, and it is no accident that, you know, these rebels who kind of appeared out of nowhere, and there'll be genuine people among them who want to end that Gaddafi oppression, but they're just walking into another oppression if they're not streetwise, which they're not. But within those rebels, there's no way that the cover story is adding up when you've got people apparently being bombed from the sky and there's a no-fly zone to help them and all that stuff. And yet at the same time, this rebel group have managed to create a new Libyan central bank, and also a new Libyan oil company. They've already signed an oil deal with Qatar, and the European Union has said to Egypt after this so-called revolution that wasn't, that of course if you make the necessary economic reforms, then we'll give you loans which will put you massively in debt to us, and that's the idea. So the idea is to take over these countries, and any that are not totally kind of sucked in and absorbed by the global banking system, well, they will be. That's the idea. And that's why Libya's being targeted and not the other countries. But they will be in the end. They want the lot. They want the whole of Africa.
Absolutely. And expanding on that, this sets an incredible precedent where the UN puts out a resolution. Within 48 hours or less, a new war is launched. And the rebels were publicly backed, the core of them, by British intelligence, SAS, U.S. CIA. That's now all been admitted. And so what a precedent. The globalists financed some rebels, and now it sets the precedent where NATO, the UN, and the U.S. come in and bomb them and then overtake the country. This is an incredible precedent and a big move forward towards global government.
Yeah, when you start absorbing these things, like NATO and the United Nations, you know, I said years and years ago that basically the United Nations peacekeeping operation, often the opposite, and the NATO operation were going to be absorbed into one eventually, and we'd call it the World Army. There'd be other elements to it too, but certainly the absorption of that. And you've just described what's just happened. The UN have a decision, and then the NATO are now carrying out that decision in effect.
We're already into world government. It's implementing it through the nation states they control, through the IMF, World Bank, UN. We're already in the world government. They're picking off the last countries they didn't control.
Yes, and the key one they want is Iran, because that's vital not just to control of the region, but also it's in that area around the Caspian Sea, going up to, you know, Georgia, another George Soros Brzezinski revolution, put that guy Saakashvili in, who's just a front man for him, and all these other countries around the Caspian Sea where there are fantastic reserves of oil and gas. So if this map, if people carry it around with them or keep it with them, they can unless something intervenes here, they can start ticking these countries off, because that's not a real a map to them. It's a wish list. That's what it is. And they've been
David,
planning this for so long.
David, I want to shift gears into some other issues when we come back, but you're absolutely spot on here. But what about Obama, the Peace Prize winner? Now they're talking about another Peace Prize. So now war is peace.
Well, this is the the mind game that's going on, Alex, that we've been talking about. The idea is to manipulate people's sense of perception so they do actually see that opposites are not opposites, but actually are the same, like war is peace.
Oh, it's amazing to watch it, and liberals praising Soros because he helped round people up to the Nazis, and then they say, if you're not for that, you're a Nazi. I mean, this is total mind control. We'll be right back. We were just talking about the Orwellian way by design. They're training you to be a slave. When they go before the city council and point out with medical doctors a 7-fold increase in bone cancer from fluoride in the water, they laugh. When you go with CBS News about them putting uranium in Texas water, knowingly, they laugh. They know full well. They enjoy it. It's all part of the fun. Now, remember, they've got troop ships off the coast. A Marine Corps general 2 weeks ago said they are preparing to invade. The UN resolution, they say, well, it's going to be a ground force of peace, but we will never ground invade. We will invade, but the military bombing is a kinetic action, not a bombing. And we're going to invade, but we're not going to invade. And you go, but you're using doublespeak there. And they go, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Being able to breathe is a conspiracy theory. Being able to tie your shoelaces is a conspiracy theory. Being able to go, well, raising safe radiation levels 25,000 times, EPA, because the levels are going up on the West Coast, that doesn't still make it safe. Even the old level was dangerous. And they go, no, you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm George Monbiot. I now love radiation. Ha, 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 ha. I'm Ann Coulter. Ha, ha, ha. And they're just counting on you to go, okay, here is CBS News, just out, going up on Infowars.com. General, U.S. may consider troops in Libya. Our troops were there 6 weeks ago when this started. The British troops, the CIA. They admittedly have al-Qaeda as the vanguard. Army General Carter Ham says ground forces wouldn't be ideal. Oh, see, first, we would never do it, but may be possible with the aid of Webbles, says current operation largely stalemated. Oh, so there's always been ground troops. Now the troop ships have arrived, but there'll never be a ground invasion, but there will be a ground invasion, David.
Yeah, I was looking at this the other day. In Britain, they were making statements earlier on in this Libyan operation saying they wouldn't arm the rebels. And then suddenly, when the rebels started getting pushed back, it was like, oh, well, we can't rule it out. We can't take it off the table. And, of course, the question...
They'd already armed them before that.
I know. But the thing is, if this rebel army, or whatever you want to call it, does not take the country, and they're clearly not going to take the country the way things are going or anything like, then they'll just up the ante and up the ante and up the ante and go back on assurances that they had before, because the idea is to take the country. And that's what the whole thing's about. And it's got so ludicrous. I mean, the thing is so ludicrous that the commander of the NATO operation, speaking in Europe, I think it was a few days ago, he said that they were there to protect civilians, and so they would also attack the rebels if they were killing civilians. Well, it's now been shown very clearly. There's another story today about this, and another example, that NATO bombers have been killing civilians. So did NATO bomb themselves now in retaliation? I mean, the whole thing's insane. But what we're seeing, what you mentioned earlier about the mind game, over the years, you see where they'll say, sugar's bad for you, and sugar's bad for you, and then they'll come out and say, well, no, sugar's not bad for you, and all this stuff. And I remember my mother going years back where she used to say, oh, they tell you this, and then they tell you that, I can't be doing with it. And people switch off because they're given this constantly reversed information. It's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. And eventually they're looking for a switch-off point, and that's what's going on with all this mind game. This is why they're saying ludicrous things like radiation of fantastic levels is good for you, and then it's bad for you, and then it's good for you. And eventually people switch off and think, I can't be doing with it. And what's that? It's a form of acquiescence. They've stopped taking part in the game, stopped taking part in the situation, and become acquiescent to it.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing, but they're doing it out of desperation because you've got one group of people getting more dumbed down, more servile, more prepared to accept up is down, down is up, black is white, white is black, war is peace, death is life. But then you've got an even larger group beginning to form who's becoming more and more enlightened and astute and aware, 20 more minutes with David Icke. He's been gracious. DavidIcke.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. Other key issues straight ahead. Stay with us. Number 4, David Icke's our guest. We were just talking during the break about the fact that the globalists are horrified. One level is afraid of the next level, and the next level in this pyramid, in this psychopathic system. David, break that down, the psychology of psychopaths and the sociopaths and sadists that work for them.
Well, it's a pyramid of terror, really, because one level has control over the next level, and so that level's frightened of it. But it's frightened of the level above it, and it's frightened of the level above it. And ultimately, there is a spider in the center of the web. We can discuss and have different views about what that spider is, from which everything is coming out from. But they are all absolutely terrified of that spider. And the Rothschilds and families like that are very close to the spider, which is one of the key reasons why so many within the structure are terrified of the Rothschilds and do whatever they say. So you look at these people and, you know, like Soros, you know, on one level he will have power, but he's carrying out an agenda for those much more powerful than him, and woe betide if he doesn't do it, and doesn't do it the way he's told to do it, and isn't successful in what he's told to do. So they seem kind of arrogant on one level, and I'm sure they are, but there is this constant pyramid of fear, and what they've done is transfer that structure, if you like, into human society, if you look at it, which is a society overwhelmingly based on fear. Fear of tomorrow, fear of what's going to happen next week, fear of this, fear of that. The whole of human society is based on fear, and it's a reflection of the structure that is controlling human society, which is completely based on fear. And like I say, they're terrified of the Rothschilds when they come to call, because the Rothschilds are so close to this spider, whatever we choose to believe it is.
Continuing, what do you expect to see them doing now as they come more and more out in the open? Because we've already revealed them, so now they've got to reveal themselves in their own way.
Well, you know, I said this years ago. There was always a time when they had no choice but to put it on public display, because when you're manipulating over a long period of time behind the scenes in the shadows to turn the world into a certain structure, into a certain way of operation, a certain way of control and enforcement, then there comes a time when that society has to start becoming obvious to people, because if it doesn't, then you're not going to introduce it. And I said years ago, there's going to come a window of time when we're going to see this come into public display, and it's going to be undeniable where it's going. And we're entering that period now very, very quickly. And the idea is to throw everything at us. We must be strong. We must be calm and not panic and not get caught in the whole wave of fear and all the rest of it, because they are in the period where they're going to throw everything at humanity to put us in a state of acquiescence that they can come along and say, we are the people that can sort it out. But to sort it out, this is what's got to happen. And also, through these dumbing down, constant shocks, constant sources for fear and worry and terror, to put people in the mental and emotional state of the mouse in the laboratory maze, where we basically go into almost a zombie-like state of acquiescence, where we don't almost need controlling anymore, because we just basically gone into a zombie state, and we will do whatever we're told to do. And if people say, you know, that's not possible, well, it's happening in China. I mean, have you seen people lining up in factories in China before going to
Stay
work?
there. Let's talk about it when we come back. We've called it cognitive dissonance. People being conditioned in their comfort zones to just parrot and repeat what they've been told. And as the corruption gets worse and worse, people don't want to admit they've been conned, so they burrow deeper into denial. Some people wake up. The media calls us conspiracy theorists. Day one, the West launched the attacks in Libya with the rebels. It's al-Qaeda. They're getting ground troops ready the whole time. The Marines admitted it 2 weeks ago. Now, CBS News, they're getting ready to invade with ground troops if needed. They've been there the whole time. And Glenn Beck, in his last show on Fox, when he said he was being kicked off, and that's the inside thing, he's being kicked off, he says they've decided he's going to leave. Because even that much truth was scaring the system. They tried to co-opt us. It didn't work. Beck's now obsessing on the normalcy bias that we've talked about over the years. The normalcy bias refers to mental state people enter when facing a disaster. It causes people to underestimate both the possibility of the disaster occurring and its possible effects. And the famous cases are people, as the buildings are smoking, going back up 20 flights of stairs to turn their computer off, their light off. People on the Titanic saying it's sinking, it's listing, things are falling off the deck. Especially the rich people. They were the worst. The poor folks, they were all abandoning ship if they could. They would go back in their suits and smoke a cigar saying, everything will be fine, the authorities will fix it. And so that's what's going on here. And so as things get crazier and crazier, that's what David Icke's been talking about. A lot of people are deciding to buy into anything. And they're go ahead, David.
Sorry, mate. I was going to say, yeah. What the mental process is simply, I wish this wasn't happening, so I'll convince myself that it's not. That's the mental state, and that's the worst thing we can do. What we need to do is stand up and face it. It is what it is. Until we recognize something as it is, we can do nothing about it. And lots and lots of people, no question, lots of people are going to go into massive states of cognitive dissonance and denial. They already are, because they don't want to face the truth of what's happening, so I'm going to convince myself it's not true. And that's why a lot of people like us get attacked, because it's the equivalent of, I don't want to hear it. Change the subject, okay? Don't want to hear it. And when people don't want to hear you saying something to them, because they don't want to be reminded actually of what's going on. And so some deep level they know is going on, but they don't want to face it. This is the time when we're going to see the wheat and the chaff. This is the time when we're going to see those that have the courage to stand up, and those who just want to run away and hide, because we're now at the point that it's a fork in the road. I've been talking about this for so many years, the fork in the road. Are we going to go that way or that way? And it's choice time. And that fork in the road, in so many ways, is, are we going to face this, be strong, calm, and keep control of our own mind and perceptions, or are we going to go down that road and give it all away in the fake, false idea and the false interest that somehow those that have created the mayhem are going to protect us from it?
Well, David, I mean, in closing here with about 3-4 minutes left with you, look, not just the lies about the wars or the WMDs or the banking system, but we know that for at least 4 years we've been in a global depression. We know the dollar's being devalued. We know gold and silver are going up. But yuppies who didn't buy gold when it was $300 an ounce or $600 or $800, they will still get angry and make fun. I see them laughing at people that quadrupled their wealth because they can't admit that they were wrong. And it's the same thing with them saying the recession's been over since June of 2009, almost 2 years ago. Once they, again, buy into the lie, they don't want to admit they're wrong as the economy falls apart. And now the controlled corporate media, more than ever, is telling us the economy's wonderful when the economy is not wonderful, and when they are reorganizing it to make us totally controlled, where they're cutting off the resources so we have to follow their orders.
Well, one of the reasons, of course, and there are many, why they want people to think the economy is wonderful, because they want people to buy into the economy as they did before in the run-up to 2008, because they know they're going to crash it big time again.
Or 29, or 29.
It's all gone.
Or 29.
Yeah, they're drawing them in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they draw them in, and that's what's happening now. Oh, everything's fine. Oh, invest in this, invest in that. What is it Obama said? Invest in the stock market. This is the best time to do it, and all that stuff. And it was the worst time to really do it, and certainly will be now, because they're going to crash it again. And this thing with Soros is really bringing to the fore this point where they come forward, those who've created the problem, and say, we're the only ones, because governments can't look. We're the only ones that can solve it. And people need to get wise to this and stop observing the prison being built and start to get organized in networks of non-cooperation, so people don't cooperate together, so people don't leave foreclosed houses when they're foreclosed because they can't pay their rent because of what the banks did, they lost their jobs. What kind of cycle? If we'll accept that cycle and pack up and leave, we'll accept anything. And these things, this mass non-cooperation needs to be organized. That's the level that it will change it, not mass marches. I mean, how many million people have marched against things, and the things have happened anyway? It's non-cooperation they can't stand.
And exactly, David, the media, the controlled, mind control media, plays up that a march is the only way to do something. No, it's individually waking your friends up. It's buying organic food. It's supporting alternative media. It's speaking out. It's calling into talk radio. It's going and speaking at your city council. People all over the West are going to city councils, speaking out week after week, month after month, and in a few years, they're removing fluoride everywhere this is done. When we resist, we have victory, and that's the big secret, how special and how powerful we are. DavidIcke.com. David, thank you for spending time with us, and I really look forward to speaking to you again in the future. 30-second closing comment.
Well, I just say about Obama, he's looking darker and more, well, kind of zombie-like. The more that I see him, something's clearly happening to him. I see he's just said he wants 4 more years. I'm not saying this will happen, and I'm not making any predictions, but I tell you what, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point they took him out, because of what that would do to America and what they'd be able to justify in terms of homeland security in America, because he's on the way very, very clearly to being a liability for them, because he's been sus big time.
So you're saying Obama could be the false flag. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, David.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
All right, there goes David Icke. Shifting gears for the balance of the 5 minutes.